The confrontation between Iran, Israel, and the United States of America is not primarily a military conflict, it is a battle for legitimacy. Before missiles move, narratives move. Before strikes happen, justifications are written. Each of these states is trying to convince the world that it is acting in defense, not aggression. That is the real battlefield. Legitimacy. Now, why does legitimacy matter so much? You see, modern conflict requires more than just weapons, it requires explanation. Governments must persuade their own citizens, their allies, international institutions, global public opinion. If a state can frame its actions as necessary defense, it gains diplomatic cover and political support. So the real question is not only what is happening, but how is what is happening being described. Now, in this video, we're going to be looking at how these three states are basically trying to tell their own stories or how they're trying to frame each other. First and foremost, let's look at how the United States is trying to, the United States and Iran, the United States and Israel are trying to frame Iran in this conflict. The United States and Israel describe Iran as a sponsor of terrorism, a destabilizing force in the Middle East, a state seeking nuclear capability, a regime that has allowed slogans such as death to America, death to Israel in public political culture. From their perspective, this rhetoric is not symbolic, it is evidence of hostility. Iran has supported armed proxy groups in the region. Iran has expanded uranium enrichment after 2018. Iran has been sanctioned under the United Nations Security Council resolutions related to its nuclear program. When all of this is combined, these elements create a frame. Iran is dangerous, Iran are expansionist, Iran cannot be trusted. Within that frame, preemptive action can be presented as defensive, right? Preemptive action can appear to be justifiable. But now here's where contradiction now comes. In 2015, Iran signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA. It agreed to limit enrichment and accept inspections. In 2018, the United States withdrew from that agreement and reimposed sanctions. After the withdrawal, Iran gradually reduced compliance with enrichment limits. Now both sides accuse the other of breaking trust. The United States says Iran violated restrictions. Iran says the United States collapsed the agreement first. This is not a simple story of one side breaking the rules, it is a breakdown of diplomatic structure. And when trust collapses, narrative then fills the gaps. Different stories, conspiracies now fill that gap. Now how does Israel now frame Iran in this particular conflict? For Israel, Iran is described as an existential threat. Iran funds Hezbollah. Iran supports Hamas. Iran rejects Israel's legitimacy. For Israel's perspective, from Israel's perspective, right, this is about survival. But Israel is also engaged in a devastating conflict in Gaza. Civilian casualties and destruction have drawn international scrutiny for Israel's actions in Gaza. Israel argues its actions target militant infrastructure. Critics argue that the scale of destruction challenges Israel's moral claims. So when Israel frames Iran as uniquely aggressive, others point to Gaza and question the moral clarity. That is where narratives collide. Now, how does Iran then frame the United States and Israel? How do they describe them? Iran does not describe itself as an aggressor, no. It describes itself as a state that is resisting domination. It frames the United States as imperial. It frames Israel as an occupying force, sanctions as economic warfare. Iran argues it's defending sovereignty against pressure and encirclement. Yet Iran also expands influence through regional proxies. It develops missile capabilities. It seeks strategic depth across the region. What Iran calls defense, others call expansion. Again, this is competing narratives. Now, what this conflict is actually about, let's get to the crux of this. If we strip away all the moral language, what remains are strategic interests. The United States seeks to prevent nuclear proliferation and protect alliances. Israel seeks military superiority and security. Iran seeks regime survival and regional leverage. These goals are strategic. They're not moral. It's not about right or wrong, but they're presented in moral language. Because modern warfare, right, requires public justification. Now, here's the thing: the danger is not about how these different stories are being told by the government, how these stories could be dangerous. No, that's not actually where the danger is. The danger is when those stories go unexamined, right? If we don't start looking at these different stories that these states are telling, right? Because when a state says defense, are people asking defense of what? When it says security, are people asking security from whom? When a state says we want peace, or we are doing this for peace, are people asking on whose terms? This confrontation is not simply about weapons. It's about who gets to define reality. And in modern geopolitics, the story that these states tell often shapes the outcome more than anything that these strikes are going to actually tell. I'm going to say it again. In modern geopolitics, the story that is being told often shapes the outcome just as much as the strike.